Hello everybody, welcome to Dynamite After Dark. This is your usual host, Zanman Shane Sabuni, along with my good buddy, the Honorable Jeff, and we're here to talk about the very first pro wrestling show of, at least televised wrestling show of 2020, the first episode of Dynamite After Dark in the new year, and the first episode of Dynamite After Dark in 2 weeks, and it's a pretty good show, Jeff. What do you think?
I thought it was a great show. I love the fact that we possibly got our match of the year on the first match of the year.
Those two so far, isn't it?
It definitely was, and I to be honest, these two have a great count on towards the middle to end of last year. Cody was both in our top 10. We just didn't feel like he had the, I guess, the book of matches to really get him in that top 5 wrestler of the year category.
Yeah, you didn't feel he was top 5.
I didn't think he. I just didn't think he did. But I mean, those two put on a damn clinic to start the year. I thought that was phenomenal. It's going to be hard pressed to get a better match out of anybody than we got out of those two.
Yeah, I really wanted to see Darby win, but other than that, I did really enjoy the match. I figured Cody was probably going to win, but I really would have liked to see Darby pick up the victory. Cody losing a match is not going to hurt him any.
I don't think at this point Darby losing a match is going to hurt him any either. To be honest, I think that he is a man on fire, and I think he's just continuing to get better and better and better. And the more I see him wrestle, the more I really this guy and think that he is deserving of a top spot.
Eventually, yeah. I mean, he's not there yet, but he definitely is on it there.
One thing this show kind of brought to mind for me, and I'm a little embarrassed, not only at us, but Walt Culture didn't have him in. None of the other Wrestler of the Year websites or anything that I saw had PAC anywhere near their top 10. He is one of the best wrestlers on the planet, plain and simple, and he proved it again tonight.
He is, and he was the champion of Dragon Gate for 2/3 of the year or so. But that's the problem: is it was in Dragon Gate, and it's not a widespread promotion. They do have their own streaming service, but it doesn't have very good numbers. I think he flies under the radar a lot simply because of that.
And that's sad because he is legitimately one of the best wrestlers in the world, and it's hard to say otherwise.
It is, but last year, you could say the same thing about Walter. Because Walter was in WSW for the most part, and he had a great acclaimed run, but he wasn't in our list of the top 10 wrestlers simply because we didn't get to see him very much.
That's true. And this year, I mean, he started on, with Defiant and then quickly came over to NXT and probably turned a lot of heads then. But you're right. Last year, he was not anywhere where anybody that didn't have the desire to search for could find him.
Right. And that's the thing is that you can hear about all these hot wrestlers, but and they could be doing great stuff, but if you're not seeing them, you can't really rate them on that.
Which is a perfect example of both Will Ospreay and Ricochet. What, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah.
They were in that same boat.
Yeah, well, it was about the same time that Cody was leaving WWE. So what was that, like 2016?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, because it wasn't until they had an internet classic that lit the world on fire because it was just this ridiculous poetry type match. But otherwise, it wasn't until they both really caught on in NJPW that people figured out who they were, and then. If you didn't realize that Ricochet was the guy under the mask on Lucha Underground, you kind of missed the boat on him. There was a lot of great stuff to watch by those guys a couple years ago, and you're right, we never saw them, so we didn't know. But this match here and then every match that we've seen from PAC since he came to AEW has just been outstanding. And even his run in Defiant and, some of the stuff he did outside of AEW last year it was amazing stuff.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, he's been great. No question. Definitely should have been in some that I thought about in my top 10.
I'm embarrassed that I didn't even consider him, to be honest.
Well,
but regardless, we opened this show. Let's get back to talking about this show. We opened it with probably the wrestler of today against the wrestler of tomorrow. Basically, Darby Allin is he's so fun to watch because he's not, and I think I said it, I know, at their match at Fyter Fest. He is what Jimmy Havoc always wanted to be. And he continues to prove it. He's a very sound technical wrestler. He's smooth in the ring. He sells very well. And then he mixes in some stupidity along with it. He's a very, very, very talented guy. And I think he's going to go a long way. And if he continues to put on classics like this against Cody, he's going to prove it.
He's got great charisma. He's got great look. He can stand to add a few pounds, but but he does have great charisma. He does have a strong look with the makeup and the gear he wears. I love his entrance theme. I love his wrestling style. He's got it all, man. I really enjoy him, and I do think he's going to be a major superstar in the future. You said something interesting about Cody, though, that he's the wrestler of today, and when I look at the guys, over the last year or so that have put together these incredible psychological classics in the ring, Cody has just become an amazing storyteller since he left WWE.
Well, in
WWE, he had his moments, but since he left WWE, he's had so many of them where he just put together these classic matches. And he's one guy that I think WWE, if they cared about wrestling, would look at that and go, how do we let this guy get away? How do we not let him spread his wings when he begged us to?
I think you kind of said it when you talked about Darby Allin. Darby Allin is a similar build to Cody, where they both could stand to put on 10 to 20 pounds of muscle. They both are very, granted, Darby is a little bit lighter in the frame than Cody is now, but Cody is not that huge bodybuilder type wrestler, and Darby Allin's got kind of the same build to him. Cody and his run with the U.S. title or was it the U.S. or did he have the Intercontinental? I can't remember which, but when he had the mustache and he had the face mask and, he was trying, to protect his face all the time, and his run with Sandow and all that, I thought was one of the best in the world at the time. But he quickly got swept under the rug after the whole Sandow feud, and then he got put into the tag team with his brother, which was, heartwarming and all that, but then got straddled with that Stardust character. After he left in 2016, it's hard to say there has been a more complete storyteller and better, not just in-ring performer, but out of the ring, he has been phenomenal as well in Cody. Mm-hmm. He's been on fire since he joined Bullet Club, since he tried to take down Kenny, since he went through their whole feud and all the stuff he did in Ring of Honor and now we're a year into AEW essentially, and he just continues to get better and grow. It's hard for me to say. We've had some flash in the pans. When he was having his feud with Kenny was kind of rising to the top of NJPW at the time, but Kenny was also still not that greatest wrestler in the world type thing. Where outside of maybe Okada, has there been anybody more consistent since 2016 than Cody?
Maybe Marty.
Yeah, but Marty has had a great run, but he's been kind of straddled with that Junior's gimmick.
He was, but as far as consistently being strong in the ring, I would say Marty, maybe Zack Sabre Jr. But I mean, they're all kind of in that same area. And then Kenny has been fantastic as well.
Kenny's been fantastic for the last 2+ years, but well, not even. I wouldn't even say the last 2+ years. Probably the last year and a half since his Wrestle King. Well, now I guess it would be 2 years. It was his Wrestle Kingdom match against Okada that kind of put him on the map, and ever since then he's been great. But before then, he struggled a lot with his storytelling. He did show in his match tonight the Kenny that I said 6 months ago that we need to count, or not 6 months, Jesus, 6-7 weeks ago, that we need to count our blessings that we get to see a guy of his talent in the ring every single week. And he kind of showed more of that again this week. But
I would say Kenny has been great since Dominion 2016. So about 3.5 years now.
Okay, yeah. So we're looking at about the same time then Cody really kind of came on.
Yeah, because remember right after Dominion, that Dominion he had that great ladder match against Michael Elgin.
Yep.
And then he had the run through the G1 right after that.
And then he had his U.S. title. He put on that classic with Jay White.
Right.
Yeah, and then his little feud against Hangman and his feud against Cody, and then the Bucks and all that stuff. Yeah, you know what? You're right. Cody, these two have kind of over the last 2 to 2.5 years have been the pun intended elite of the wrestling world.
And since you reminded me of him on Monday night, I'm also going to say that aside from his injury, Jon Moxley's been right there with him too. He
had kind of a subpar run in his feud with AJ Styles when the Chin was involved. How was that guy's name? Ellsworth?
Yeah, but Moxley himself was fantastic throughout all of that.
Yeah, he was, but at the same point, yeah, fuck.
I mean, I know that I liked his matches against Jericho a lot better than most people did. I thought his matches against Styles, all of them were outstanding. His match against Dolph Ziggler at SummerSlam 2016 was outstanding, and very underrated.
And it was 2016 when he had that match that when all three of them when he won Money in the Bank.
Yes.
And then he cashed in later that year. So yeah, you're right.
Later that night, dude.
Well, that's what I said. Later that night, didn't I? Did I say year?
You said year.
I meant later that night. But yeah, you're probably right. It would be those three. I can't think of anybody else that's been on a consistent level like those three have been for that length of time. Other than, obviously, Okada.
Right, and it kind of coincides. And honestly, I love AJ Styles, but it kind of coincides with the start with AJ Styles' start of his downslide as far as greatness in the ring.
But a lot of that with AJ Styles is his, he's getting older.
Well, yeah.
It's hard for him to be the AJ Styles that was the best in the world when he he admittedly can't perform the moves like he used to.
Yeah. So, I would also say the same about Shinsuke Nakamura,
Yeah, because Shinsuke started to get, when he moved to NXT, I think he cashed in at the right moment because he was hitting that age where it's like, okay, now I'm going to start my downfall. People forget how long Shinsuke has been in the wrestling business. And a lot of that's because he was in NJPW before they really became popular.
Yeah, you can't, there's so many people out there that praise Tanahashi for his longevity and his greatness, along with, of course, the fact that he brought NJPW back from near bankruptcy and failure.
He didn't do it alone, though.
No, but he was the top guy throughout a lot of that, and he was the guy bringing in the he was the guy drawing a lot of the crowds. But you also have to look at the fact, but you can't emphasize his longevity and greatness over that time. It doesn't mean anything if everybody else that came up with him was able to do the same thing. Shibata wasn't able to. Shibata's been out for the last No, almost
It's been
2 years now.
Yeah.
You know, with that concussion, Shinsuke, who also started, and of course Shibata went to MMA for a while, so wasn't even in pro wrestling for a while. And
Right.
Shinsuke also is on a downslide. And those were the second batch of the Three Musketeers for NJPW. So I think
Wasn't
it's
Okada
a great contrast with Tanahashi that Tanahashi is still in one of those four pillar positions, but Nakamura, even if he went back to NJPW right now, would not be able to crack it. I don't think. On the other hand, look how great Kenta's been since he's returned. So.
I think Shinsuke, because Shinsuke was really the godfather of the that strong style that got over. Because people forget Shinsuke was one of the top guys in NJPW as far back as 2008, 2009. I mean, the guy's been a top superstar now going on 10 years.
Shinsuke?
Yeah.
No, it's before that, which is probably like 2002, 2003.
You think Shinsuke's been one of the top guys that long?
Well, he came out with Tanahashi. So.
Right, but it was Tanahashi really kind of set the bar and got there first, and then Shinsuke followed his lead with creating chaos and all of that.
Right, but 2009 is when. Oh no, I was thinking Wrestle Kingdom 9, not 2000. Yeah, you're probably
that was
on the right track. Yeah.
2000 Wrestle Kingdom 9 was what, 2014? Yeah.
Yeah.
Would have been 14 or 15 because we're at Wrestle Kingdom 14 now. So.
Yeah, it was 14. Yeah, I was thinking incorrectly. Yeah, 2009 is probably the right time frame.
And that's when Shinsuke became the leader of Chaos around 2009. He won his first title. There was his he had his matches against Kurt Angle around 2009, 2010 when they unified the IWGP heavyweight title. He's been, and he was a top draw for at least 5-6 years in NJPW before Tanahashi kind of took that from him. And
there's some debate that can be had about who the greatest WWE Intercontinental Champion of all time is, or who the greatest WCW United States Champion of all time is. It's Lex Luger, but there's some debate about that. But
that's the WCW. Not the WWE.
Yeah, that's what I said, WCW United States title.
But I thought you said WWE. Okay.
In NJPW, there's no question who the greatest Intercontinental Champion is in NJPW, and that's obviously Shinsuke.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, is there really a debate about who the greatest Intercontinental title holder in WWF has ever been?
Would you say it's Jericho?
No.
Who would you say it is?
I'm Savage.
Yeah, see, there's a big debate about that because you could say Savage, you could say Jericho, you could say Christian, you could say Bret Hart, you could say Kurt Hennig.
I think it's a two-dog race between Jericho and Savage, but I don't think anybody brought more prestige to it than Randy Savage did. Randy Savage made that belt the top belt in the industry in the WWF because Hogan was on limited appearances. He would show up only at 3-4 matches a year. In the 3-4 individual matches a year was usually only at the big pay-per-views, but Savage was the workhorse. He was the guy who literally when he was the Intercontinental title holder, that was probably the top belt in the company. And you can't say that when Jericho had it.
No, but then people carried on that tradition of the Intercontinental title being a great wrestler's championship. You look at Kurt Hennig, you look at Bret Hart, you look at Jericho, down the line, and there's been some great Intercontinental champions. So while Savage is probably the guy that established it as being definitely the guy that established it as being prestigious, I don't necessarily know that I consider him to be the greatest Intercontinental champion of all time. I have to really think about it, and that's the thing is like with Luger, I don't have to think about it. With Shinsuke, I don't have to think about it.
That's true. I mean, and both you and I have said this so many times. Wrestling is so subjective to your own personal feelings, and guys like Savage are the reason why I started watching the WWF in the first place. So, of course, he's going to have a little bit more of a soft spot in my heart. And him as the Intercontinental title is when I started watching WWF. Before then, I was an AWA, NWA fan. But then when you see a guy like Randy Savage who goes out there and works the way that he did and sold the way that he did and was able to be that just despicable villain, but at the same time draw you into every match, it's hard to – for me, it's really hard to look past a guy like that.
Sure. And I started watching WWE right before he lost the championship to Steamboat. And that actually leads me to somebody else we didn't mention who could also be, by the numbers considered the greatest Intercontinental champion of all time, and that's the guy that beat Steamboat for it, Honky Tonk Man.
Yeah, that's just because he held it for so long.
I know, but that's what I said, by the numbers.
Right. I don't know. Here we go. We're getting distracted away from the show that we're actually talking about. But
the second match on this show tonight, it was a decent match. It was actually better than decent. It was a really good match. But I still have a real issue with these matches the way that they're set up, because it's like Chris Statlander just beat Britt Baker on the December 18th edition to be the number one contender for the women's championship, right? So yep. She already had her title match set for next week on Dynamite, and yet the second, third, and fourth contenders get a title shot before she does.
I think if I read this right, and I'm trying to, because I did read something about this where they had an explanation for it. It's like over the last couple of months, all three of these people held that number one contendership spot at some point, and they never actually got their title match. And that's why this was kind of thrown together.
Oh, is that the reason for it?
I read that somewhere, and I don't know if that was an official AEW statement or if that was just something I read somewhere. But I did remember reading that somewhere where since Riho lost or defended the title again, or the last couple of her title defenses, the last couple times have been against the chick trying to be Freddie Mercury, the mustache chick.
Right.
And since then, all three of these competitors have held that number one contender spot, but they never ever got their number one contender match. So they were kind of thrown into one, saying, "All right, here you go, you guys. This is a make good."
Well, that's great, but I mean, and that's. And I did have a criticism about that before, as you know, about the fact that I didn't think it was right that, there was a number one contender match between Britt Baker and Hiroku Shida. Is that her name?
I don't know.
Shida,
I have no clue.
Whatever her first name is. Shida.
It's something Shida.
Yeah, and then because Shida lost the next week to Chris Statlander, then all of a sudden she's out as number one contender. So it's Baker against Statlander for the number one contendership. I didn't like that whatsoever. So I can kind of see that, but at the same time, it's not really a reward to be a top champion when you have to face three other competitors at the same time as the champion.
True.
I understand what you're saying, and I get that kind of logic. I guess I just don't like it.
I'm not saying I liked it. I'm just saying that's kind of the explanation I heard. The match itself was, for a women's match, a fatal four-way like that, I thought was really well done.
Oh, it was definitely. I really hope that Statlander beats Riho for the championship next week, and then we get a match again between who I think are the two best women in the division for that championship at Revolution, which would be Shida versus Statlander.
Yeah, that would.
I like Riho. I know you're a huge fan of Riho, but
I'm a huge fan of Riho.
But I do think Statlander and Shida are both better than her.
I'm a huge fan of Riho only because she stole the show at the first 4 ever shows. And she continues to put on really, really good matches and has a really high work rate. It doesn't, but I agree with you. Those other two are better than her. And I would argue that Allie is actually better than her too. We just haven't gotten to see really Allie in action.
I think Allie is overrated. I think she's good, but I think she's overrated.
I think she gets too caught up in stupid gimmicks like this whole bunny thing, and we lose a sight of how good she actually is. Here's the moment I'm rewatching.
What's been my top criticism of NXT over the last several weeks?
The women's division?
No, it looks too polished. It looks too choreographed,
yeah.
right?
All right.
And that's how I feel about Allie when she's in there.
I'm rewatching Dynamite because I was babysitting the first hour and a half, so I kind of
it's not
I was watching.
Your own kid, dude.
No, it's not my kid. My kid's not here this week. But one thing that caught me, and I forgot to mention it, is the Arn Anderson. I was so confused when I saw him standing there. It's like, what the hell? Why is he up there? And then when he was announced as the head coach, I was like, okay, I thought, DDP was that guy. But the ending of this match, this first match, when he kind of got up on the apron and pointed to his knees, and then Cody took that cue and got his knees up for the coffin drop, it kind of showed me what Arn Anderson's role is. And if he's going to continue in that kind of role, that's the way a manager should be. Not standing on the corner, drawing heat and all that stuff. I mean, a heel manager, yeah, Bobby Heenan, Slick, all these guys, some of the greatest ever. But for a face manager, that's the way a face manager should be. The way that he was able to, draw the announcers to him saying, oh, he's up on the apron, you watch what he's doing, because that's what a manager does. They get up on the apron, they cause havoc. Mm-hmm. But for him just to be yelling and pointing at his knee, and then Cody to get his knee up, I thought that was a really good take on the way a face manager should be.
Yeah, I liked that a lot. I agree with you. And it was nice to see him out there,
The other nice thing, too, is Sammy Guevara kind of stole this show. He had two really, really great, I guess I don't want to say great, but when you're looking at a Sammy Guevara type level where he's not that top-notch superstar. I mean, you and I love his talent in the ring. We love his charisma. We love his character. But for him to come out and confront SCU and then get into that little spiff with, what do you call him, the wrinkle guy? Is that what he called Christopher Daniels?
I think so, yeah.
And then the licking of the thumb and wiping on his camera and all that stuff. I thought he took his character to a new level, but then the way he entered the crowd like Moxley and set up the whole Jericho interview, I felt like as far as the inner circle goes, he was really the inner circle tonight. Nobody else mattered.
I was glad that Sammy showed up to interrupt that interview, because you know what the number one thing that interview was doing before that? Before you
boring the shit out of you?
Reminding me of the fact that SCU are the tag team champions for some unknown frickin' reason.
And the fact that I think their gimmick has kind of jumped the shark since they didn't win their contracts back last year.
Yeah. Yeah, but I just you know how I've been about this whole, like, what I feel is like an over pushing of Scorpio Sky and SCU, and I didn't really need to see them this week.
And as much I know how much you hate, or I not hate, but dislike the Scorpio Sky push and everything. I think, and we've talked about this before, I think Scorpio Sky is one of those guys who's really going to benefit from a heel turn and get away from SCU. I think once that happens, he's really going to show what you're hating and what other people are seeing.
Well, it's kind of ironic, because the last time we saw these guys, I was all about praising Scorpio Sky, and you were all about dissing him.
Right, because I felt like he was flat. Their match against the Bucks wasn't one of the best.
but absence did not make my heart grow fonder for that dude. Just, I don't know. I wish I could buy it. I really like, but I can't.
I really like what AEW did too with this whole resetting of the win-loss. They're keeping the rankings the way they are. They're they're going to continue to carry their overall records, their career records, but they kind of dropped it and set them all at 0 for the year, kind of like the start of a new season. I like that. It's something we've kind of all complained about how there should be an off season and seasons, not just continual whatever. I really hope that at some point they actually explain how their rankings are done, because I still don't necessarily see it. I think there needs to be a set in stone type point system, kind of like the NHL does with their rankings. But I like the fact that they kind of reset everybody's records.
Well, I don't think they could do it like the NHL does, because they do a weighted ranking system too, where a victory over the champion is going to be rated a lot higher than a victory over somebody with a losing record.
And that's why I think they need to come out and officially put their ranking system out there, so that we're not just looking at it going, wait a minute, this guy has 5 wins, but this guy has 2 wins, and this guy's ranked higher than this guy because this guy beat this guy, and it's just too confusing.
Well, that's the thing, is if they make it official like that, if they're explaining it every week how they did it,
they don't need to explain. They don't need to explain how they did it. What they need to do is they need to put out there, look, okay, if this guy gets a draw like Jungle Boy did against the champion, that counts as like 3 wins. Or just, I'm just throwing numbers out there. But if they did something like that, where they put, okay, here's the win. A win is worth 2 points. A tie is worth 1 point. A loss is, 0 points. But if you get a win against the top champion, that's like 3 wins. If you get a tie against the top champion, that's like 2 wins.
Yeah,
I
don't think that's going to happen.
No, I know it's not.
That, and I don't even want them to do that. I understand why you do, but I don't. I think good. I think it's good enough for them to tell us that the wins are weighted. We talked about Chris Stanley just a little bit ago. Like she beat Sheeta, and so she went from unranked to the number 2 contender in the company.
Right.
And then by beating Baker, then she then she is the number 1 contender. What I don't get is how come Baker was the number 1 contender after Sheeta lost, then lost to Statlander, but yet she only moves down 1 space, and Sheeta doesn't go back up to number 2.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the kind of thing that kind of like puzzles me. But I mean, I would like them to explain like why something like that happens, but not necessarily for them to give us like an overall like this is how this works in each given situation. To be honest, I would rather have them just put a point system on it. It's like you win, you get 2 points, and that's how you move up the ladder. To be honest, that's honestly the way I wish they would do it. It's never going to happen, but that's the way I wish. Now, I do think that some wins mean more than other wins.
Yeah, and that's true. In like sports though, that's not the way it works. Like in the NHL, in the NBA, in NFL, baseball, even in stuff like the boxing. I can't think of the WBL or something. That's not the way that works. That's not
how it works in pro sports. But if you look at college sports, it does work that way. Like for instance, like Duke was the number 1 team in the country, and then they lost at home for the first time in like 15 years to an unranked opponent.
And all of a sudden that unranked.
And then they went from number 1 to number 11. They dropped 10 spots. And the same thing happens in college football. Like if a team, if you beat a high ranked team, you move up the polls. If you lose to an unranked team, you're going to move down the polls really quick.
And to be honest, now that I think about it, that kind of ranking system does work better in this type of situation where you don't have common opponents. It's with the NFL, with the NBA, with the NHL, in the WBL, even in UFC, you're slotted into divisions. So when you're ranked against similar opponents. Mm-hmm. In the NFL, you've got 4 other people in your division. So, it's a lot easier to rank it. But in college basketball, your opponents are not always facing the same teams that you are, so it's a lot harder. So in that situation, a weighted win does make much more sense. And I guess in AEW, that kind of makes more sense too, because they're not at that point yet where there's divisions. Everyone is chasing Jericho. Everyone is chasing the tag team champions. Everyone is chasing the women's champions. It's not like there's a junior division or just a solely tag team division.
And I think you also said that it doesn't work that way in boxing, but it clearly does work that way in boxing. Like you can have a title match, you can win a match to be the number one contender for a title in boxing, and that match can be be negotiated, and you're ready to have a title shot, and then all of a sudden you out of nowhere get beat by somebody that you were heavily favored against, and you no longer have that title shot anymore.
Yeah. But in boxing and UFC, it does work a little more closely to team sports.
Well, UFC is totally different than boxing. Boxing is run by a whole there is no governing body for boxing like there is for UFC. That's the beauty of UFC is that.
Well, and we got to stop calling it UFC.
Going from the ground floor and become the top MMA promotion. All the fighters are controlled by the same company. Boxing is never going to be that way.
And, in a way, we kind of got to stop. I mean, you're right. You're right. Because there's not, with MMA, there's UFC, there's Bellator, there's how many other smaller promotions. Where boxing, it's just everybody.
Exactly.
The WBL is literally everybody on the planet that's a boxer is in the WBL. So how great was the final stipulation by MJF? Every stipulation by MJF was great.
But the last one where he gets to whip Cody 10 times, and then Cody can't even touch him, or he never gets a shot against MJF.
Yeah, there was so much. MJF is, as much as we've dogged him over the last, you dogged him a couple weeks ago for coming out and saying you're a pistol going up against a machine gun, and that statement. Well, you said he didn't deliver. You said if you're gonna say something like that, your promo needs to be better than it was.
Okay.
Don't make me pull the tape. I'll do it.
There is no tape.
I have digital tape on my laptop. I will pull that shit.
Digital tape.
So, stop. But he again went out and put on another just amazing promo. I love the way he works the crowd. I love the way that he's smooth in his delivery, but at the same point he's poignant and telling people to go fuck themselves without really saying it. Just his movements, his mannerisms, just the way that he talks is just so condescending, but at the same point just really good at what he does. And the way that he kind of shushed the crowd so that he and Wardlow could have this private conversation. Mm-hmm. I thought that was just a fun little touch that he does. That type of thing that only MJF can do.
And it's amazing that they've been together for such a short time, but they can speak to each other telepathically that way. Right.
It really is. They're such a great thing.
They're in sync so well. Yeah.
I also really like, to get off that MJF, and I know you're going to probably talk a little more about it, but I really like the Britt Baker heel turn. I like the fact that it wasn't...
She turned heel?
The promo that she cut on Riho?
I totally missed it.
Okay, they had a backstage promo, and she really just kind of lit into Riho about how she's out there, she's the workhorse, she cut a heel promo about how Riho is not worth what she does, and she needs to start showing up more, and the fact that she just comes in, steals everybody's glory, and then leaves. It was one of those things where it almost felt like Britt turned heel without actually attacking the face to do it. It was kind of a nice little turn in the way that heels are made, where most heels are made because they attack the face. And you didn't get that. She verbally attacked Riho. She didn't physically attack Riho, but it was definitely a heel promo that she cut.
Yeah. Well, you could definitely see the frustration on her face as that match ended too, where she ended up being the one that got rolled up and pinned yet again.
Yep, and that was the basis of her promo too.
And the other thing is, like, as much as I enjoyed that match, I'm still frustrated by the booking of
Brett Baker,
Nyla Rose.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, she quote unquote got her heat back after the match was over and by squashing Riho, but she's still, making all those stupid mistakes that that supposedly you're supposed to learn from 6 months in, and she's still doing the same stuff in the middle of matches that cost her.
One thing about that little attack.
She's not that dominant force she should be. She's not the Vader of the women's division like she should be.
Well, and I was just about to say that it's tough for her to be that when you have an awesome Kong kind of waiting in the wings to tear you apart. It's also one of those things where I'm glad they're not doing, and I wish. Part of me kind of wishes they weren't pushing her as that man beast type of thing, the way that they are. But at the same time, I see where you kind of want her to be that monster because she's the bigger of the division. And I know I just confused you because I confused myself. Because I'm kind of watching this match and talking at the same time, but I just...
You already... Oh, no, so you didn't watch it because you were babysitting. Forgot.
Well, I did. I watched it. I saw the 90% of it, but I missed... there were some key moments I missed, and you know how much I like to have wrestling on. At least it's not WWE I'm watching it now. At least I'm not watching Raw. At least I'm watching what we're talking about.
Yeah, but it's interrupting the flow of you talking, and usually you're so eloquent and flowy.
Well, yeah, you know that. I mean, that's how I base my life. Is I'm so poignant to the point, and I never go off topic or kind of sway mid sentence into something different.
What else do we have to talk about on this show?
On this one, the Elite. First of all, Adam Page may never wear a shirt like that again. Period. Ever.
Why?
Especially not public. That was horrible. He's not okay. I get that that his whole gimmick is the cowboy thing, but I would rather have him a John Wayne cowboy than a Gene Autry cowboy. I don't need to see a dime store gimmick 60s musical cowboy shirt on him and then drinking whiskey.
Well, if he comes out with a guitar, then I'll have a problem.
He doesn't need to wear a shirt like that. That was just embarrassing.
There's nothing wrong with this shirt. You got to be kidding.
Oh, that was terrible. Come on, this is Fashion Corner. I am the fashion police of AEW, and that was terrible shit.
You're the fashion police of AEW?
It was worse than the pink pants he wore or red pants he wore a couple weeks ago. Someone needs to be in charge of Adam Page's wardrobe.
I think somebody is. I think his name is Adam Page.
Yeah, he's not doing a good job at it. He needs to hire somebody else. Because this shirt was awful. Awful.
Wow. I can't believe that you get so hung up on wardrobe like you do.
When it's that bad? Come on. Oh, one thing we'll talk about that. But I don't want to forget, we need to talk about the addition of Taz to the announce team.
Why?
What was your thoughts?
Well, he wasn't the first time he's been there. He was actually on an episode of of Dark,
which I haven't watched yet. I haven't watched any yet, so I can't talk about that.
What are my thoughts on him being added to the announce team?
I would rather have him replace JR than Tony Schiavone, and have Schiavone as the lead announcer, or even Excalibur as the lead announcer. But I
guess my overall thoughts on it are that he's better now than he was when he was with TNA.
Well, his run with TNA is probably what made him this good. To be honest.
What do you mean?
I felt like he kind of hit his stride when he was with TNA, but that whole Aces and Eights gimmick ruined everybody. And even his announcing kind of fell by the wayside because of that.
Oh, see, I always liked him with Michael Cole as a team.
I liked him with Cole, but I actually liked him better with Tenay.
Okay.
For some reason, because it was Mike Tenay and not Michael Cole. If I got to choose Mike,
it was Taz and not Don West.
That's a good point. That is a good point. God, Don West was bad.
Wow. Yeah, he really was. Yeah, I guess I'd like to see more of him before I actually, espouse an opinion about it. But it was nice to have him out there. But you're right. I would rather have it be like Excalibur and Taz. I think would be excellent together if Taz is this good on a week-to-week basis. And even, but what, I really would prefer always prefer, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before or we have as a team, but I would always prefer to have a 2-man booth as opposed to a 3-man booth.
Yeah, we've talked about that multiple times, and I agree with you. I think in rare instances, a 3-man booth will work. I felt like WCW in the 98, 99. When Tenay was that third guy, I feel like NJPW does a good job with it. But the way AEW is doing it, we've really got 3 play-by-play guys. There's not one guy that is really doing color. And I think maybe that's why Taz kind of stuck out this week, is because we finally had a guy doing color. I mean, Excalibur seems to be the lead play-by-play guy. And then Jim Ross does his little play-by-play, and then, Shivani does his. But as far as a true color guy, we haven't really had that in AEW until this week with Taz.
There was actually a part in this match. I can't remember what match it was in, but where Taz went to call something, and the action, he's like, "Oh, wait, sorry about that, Excalibur."
Yeah, well, yeah, and I caught that too, and I thought that was kind of a fun little touch too, because it's weird, because I want my color guys to be color guys. I want them to be like a Tony Romo, and I hate when I do NFL references because you don't care about them, but a play-by-play guy does the play-by-play. He says, great, he hits him with a suplex, blah, blah, and then the color guy comes in, and the color guy does the majority of the talking. And you don't get that right now with AEW. You've got 3 play-by-play guys who are fighting over who should talk more. And I really did feel like Taz kind of brought that different color guy element to it.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't paying that close attention to the announcing tonight, but it was nice. It was nice to hear Taz's voice. It was nice to have him back, at least for a one-off. But as far as what I like going forward, I'd have to hear more of what he does with them, before deciding what I would prefer them to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, no, I agree. I understand completely, and I kind of do agree with that. But I did groan at JR and his barbecue reference tonight. He didn't talk about his Twitter stories, and maybe I might have missed it because I was preoccupied with a 5-month-old.
Not my problem. Go ahead.
They're loud when they bounce. I'm just saying. So I might have missed a little bit of the announcing, but at least Arlo, he just kind of talks and disturbs me for a second, then he goes back to his own thing. But man, 5-month-olds, they like in their little bouncy chairs, they're bouncing, and there's fucking shit rattling and floors shaking. It's rough. Remind me to never do that again. Just
you never asked my opinion about that kind of stuff, so how would I be able to remind you?
I kind of think about asking you maybe sometimes.
Yeah, and then you're like, no, because I know what he's going to say. He's going to tell me not to do it, and I'll do it anyway, so...
Right, and then he's going to be mad at me because he gave me his advice and I didn't take it. Yep, you're right. You're right. That's why I don't talk to you about this shit. Anyway, main event.
Don't get a cat.
I like my cat when he's not in heat and not knocking stuff off my counters.
Males
not biting me in the middle of the night. And what?
Males don't go into heat; they go into season.
This is not a male; it's a female.
You said I like him.
When did you become the grammar police?
About what? How old am I? About 39 years ago.
39.
Yeah.
Man, you started reading early.
Yep.
You're only, what, 45, right? Are you even 45 yet?
44.
Yeah, you're still a pup.
You're a year older than me.
I'm a year and a half. I'm 46. Okay. Give me that credit at least. So, anyway, main event. It was nice to see the true elite. And when everyone talks about the elite, and of course Cody gets thrown in there, and anybody that was on being the elite. But let's remember, the elite started with these three guys. The true elite is Omega and the Bucks. Adam Cole kind of came in there and took over Omega spot for a while, and Cody came in, and then then they started adding Skrull and Paige and all that. But we keep talking about the elite not being this force, and then Cody pulls himself away from the elite. You had this big storyline with Adam Page and the elite. I've never truly looked at all these guys as the elite. In my eyes, the elite has always been Kenny and the Bucks. Anyone else is just kind of an add-on. It's kind of like the NWO. The NWO is always Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan. Everyone else is just kind of there, wearing a shirt.
I know we're going to stray off topic, and I know we don't like straying off topic at all on any of our shows, but that reminds me,
because we never do it, ever.
Did you see now who they're saying is going to be the NWO that's being put in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I did, and I'm pissed off.
Yeah, me too. X-Pac, really?
I was okay with, and part of it's my fault, because remember when I said that if they're going to, what version should they go to? And I felt like if they were going to go to any version, it should have stopped with 6. Because we could have had, at that point, you've got the original 3, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hogan. You've got Ted DiBiase, the Giant, who... The Giant deserves to be in the Hall of Fame just for the length of his career. The fact that he has been a focal point. He's been a multi-time champion on every show he's been in. He actually, for his size, is a very damn good wrestler, and he's got longevity. He needs to be in the Hall of Fame. He's never going to get there as the Giant or the Big Show. The Dungeon of Doom is never going to get in. The Corporation is never going to get in. If they do get in, it's not going to be Big Show. So if Big Show is going to get into the Hall of Fame, he needs to get in as a member of the NWO.
No, he'll get in as the Big Show one day.
You think so?
Absolutely. But
I hope he does.
Take away from the fact that the reason that X-Pac was called 6 in the NWO is he was the 6th member of the NWO. Right.
And that's why I said he should have.
The Giant, and that's why it should be the Giant.
No, Giant was the 5th member. Ted DiBiase was the 4th.
Okay, he was the Giant was the 4th wrestling member of the NWO.
Right, but because remember there was that episode when Ted DiBiase came out, and he was sitting there in the audience, and he counted to 4, and then he said next week 5, and when he said 4, that was announcing that he is now a member of the NWO, and then the next week is when Giant turned and joined the NWO. Right. But you're right. I think if we're going to any iteration of the NWO, it needs to stop. And it's partly my fault. I think it needs to stop at 6. But when you ultimately think about it, I think it needs to stop at the 3.
Right. I'm saying if there was going to go 4, then it should have been the Giant and not 6. But definitely, it should have been the original 3. I think
are they?
That, I'm guessing that they bade to have Waltman join, and that's why he's in there too. But
please tell me
it annoys the hell out of me.
Please tell me that it's not that Waltman's not going in, and the Big Show is. The Waltman's going in, and the Big Show's not. Because that...
It's only 4 right now.
If the Big Show and DiBiase do not go in and they let Waltman in, I don't know that I can ever watch WWE television again. Plain and simple. And that Hall of Fame will be dead to me.
And this would also make it the second straight year that Waltman's been inducted into the Hall of Fame.
He had to be inducted as part of DX.
I know.
When you're
talking back years, he's being inducted.
But if he goes in as a member of the NWO and they do not put DiBiase and Big Show in there as well, God, I can't justify that Hall of Fame anymore.
No, it's a ridiculous thing for them to do. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, we got 4 months to find out, so.
Yeah.
God,
anyway,
now I'm pissed off. Thanks a lot for that. Now I'm not going to sleep tonight because of you ass.
Well, I asked if you'd seen who it was, and you said you had, so.
Well, I knew that Waltman had been added, but I didn't realize the other two hadn't yet.
Oh, I see.
Oh, and Moxley's spot with Orange Cassidy with the pockets. I loved it. I thought it was great. That's the kind of comedy in wrestling I want. I don't want to have complete comedy matches like Joey Ryan stuff. But this kind of thing with Orange Cassidy and him picking his spots like that, I'm really starting to enjoy.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, as far as that main event 6-man tag, I really enjoyed that match. I don't know what how much it means going forward, but I also like the fact that Paige kind of like, nah, you guys have your moment. I don't want to come out there and ruin your moment.
Well, and he did say a few things on commentary that kind of led to it, where they asked him if he was, done with the Elite, and he said, "I keep trying to be, but they keep putting me in matches with Omega." That was really a powerful moment by him, where Paige is turning heel soon. It's going to happen, and it's going to be against Omega, and I think it's going to lead to a great series between the two.
Yeah, I think that Revolution is shaping up nicely. We've got Cody versus MJF. We have Jericho versus Moxley, most likely, and most likely we have Paige versus Omega.
Oh, and Jericho, if you really want to give that car away, I'll give you my address.
We just talked about 2 days ago how you already have a shitty car for this climate, and now you want a Ford GT.
Are you kidding me? I just want the Ford GT. I'll park it in my garage for the winter. I don't care. I'll walk to work. I will walk to work, and I live 40 miles away from work. I will walk to work and park that son-of-a-bitch in the garage just to have that car.
Well, don't let Susan know you have it, because she knows the combination for your garage still.
No, she doesn't. I lock it. I changed it. Changed the locks.
Okay, I thought you told me before that you had put the.
I did, but those
on the house on the garage.
I did, but I found out this winter that those combination locks do not work well in the winter, which is great because I paid $180 for each of them.
Oh.
And they don't work in the winter.
Well, my son doesn't have a problem with his, so you must have done something wrong.
I have a drafty house, and they get frozen. The tumbler got frozen. It's not like when it's a regular door lock, I can just hit it with an air dryer. Or I've got a hair dryer out in my garage. Yes, I'm redneck. Just in case my door locks get frozen, I can hit it for a few seconds and dethaw the tumbler. You can't do that with those code ones.
Okay. Makes sense.
Now, next year when I build my addition to my house and add on, and connect it to my garage, then I'm going to put a tumbler one back, or put one of those back on. But until then, I'm back to lock and key.
Cool. That's the right way to go anyway.
No.
Anything else about this show we want to talk about?
Nah, not really.
Right,
it's a great show. It was a great show. It really, truly was. It was one of the best shows I've ever seen to kick off a new year. And I may have gotten my match of the year already. We'll see. But I also said that about Walter versus Joe Coffey. Or not. I mean, Pete Dunne against Joe Coffey.
Remember the card that we ran down on Monday night for this coming up this weekend? I don't think we've seen the match of the year already.
No, I think we have. Anyway, guys, Patreon. Please, go there, donate to us. It's patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. If you get into the $5 tier, you can hear our archives. $1, you can read any of the articles that I've written throughout the years. That $10 top tier is the one we're the most proud of, because that's where you can hear exclusive content from us. There's nowhere else to hear it. You're not going to hear it on YouTube. You're not going to hear it on Lords of Pain Radio. You're not going to hear it on Spreaker or Blog Talk. The only place you're going to hear it is on Patreon. And that's patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. We do, right now, we kind of took a break from our ECW breakdowns and Jessica Jones breakdowns to recap some Ring of Honor stuff. Some of the old specials and old pay-per-views, and so that we can kind of maybe sort of remember why we liked Ring of Honor in the first place. Also, YouTube, it's another big thing. Someday we'll be able to go live, but we need to get the likes and the subscriptions to do that. Go to youtube.com/Kingdom of Honor. Just subscribe to the page, ring the notification bell. If we ever do anything off topic or outside of our normal shows, it will show up on there. You'll get the notification. You can watch it, and you can like that too. And, of course, our Twitter. Twitter, everything I do has hashtag KOH, has hashtag DAD. KOH for Kingdom of Honor, DAD for Dynamite After Dark. And that's the best way to find us, and the best way to follow that guy over there at ZanmanLOP and myself at Regi Co-op. So there's the plugs. Do your thing.
Make sure you stay tuned to all the other shows here on LOP Radio, including this coming Saturday and Sunday, right after Wrestle Kingdom Nights 1 and Night 2 goes off the air. Jeff and I will be joined by Imp. We're doing a 3-man weave aftershock show for each one. Really early in the morning our time, really.
And Imp, just so you know, the only reason I'm staying awake that late is for you. I just want you to know that, Imp.
Wow, how sweet. You can listen to Imp tomorrow night on Imp's LOP Radio Adventure. You can also catch all the other LOP Radio shows, such as The Right Side of the Pond on Fridays. You can catch us on every Monday. Next week we'll be talking about Ring of Honor, the 9th anniversary show, right, Jeff?
Yep, we're going to do the 9th anniversary show. This would normally be this would normally be on Patreon only. We decided, because the last 2 shows have gone long, to give you guys this one for free. So it's going to be our Kingdom of Honor show next week. Is going to be recapping the 9th anniversary show of Ring of Honor.
Yep, so stay tuned for that in just a few days here. And also, keep track of, like I said, all the other LOP radio shows. Keep track of lordsofpain.net. And you can listen to all the shows for LOP radio on the LOP YouTube channel as well. Like Jeff was talking about, there's a YouTube channel for LOP radio, but then also there is the just regular Lords of Pain YouTube channel. And that's
I believe Imp has his own YouTube channel too, doesn't he?
I don't know. Possibly.
I'll have to look into that, but I believe he does.
And that's all we got. We'll try to do better next time. This is Shane saying long days, pleasant nights. And Jeff saying...
goodbye.